Hello and welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Fara Sax. My guest today is the Director of Clinical Research for Florida Center for Allergy and Asthma Research, Florina Shawwaf. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, she was waiting for me to mess it up.
You got it right.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. And it's really a privilege because you've been with the Research Center for how many years?
21.
That says so much for the organization. So Florida Center for Allergy and Asthma Care has another auxiliary arm, which is the research side.
That's correct.
So you have 19 locations throughout, all the way from Weston all the way south to Homestead, 19
Yes.
locations. And then you have 2 research centers in between all of this where it's like a boiler room. It seems like it's like a chemistry set of finding out what is going on for research, and that's what your job has been with the Florida Center.
Absolutely.
Wow. And where are you from originally?
I'm from Romania, actually Transylvania.
How many people are from Transylvania? You know, it's always like the joke that comes after that,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Transylvania.
Exactly. That's the reason I mentioned it. How many people from Transylvania have you interviewed?
You are my first, and this is your first interview, you were saying.
That's
so
right.
we really appreciate you taking that opportunity.
It's my pleasure.
So let's talk about what a clinical research study is and why it's important.
Well, a clinical trial is a medical study that is designed, sets out to determine if a medication is going to be effective and is safe. These are the 2 major things that we are looking at. When a medication is molecule is proposed to become finally a medicine and be marketed, we are looking at 2 major things. One, first of all, it starts with safety in the phase 1 trials, and then we move all the way into the phase 4 trials, and all along we are looking at the safety and efficacy of the medication.
So we're talking about asthma medications at this
We are
point.
talking
We're
about
really-
asthma, we are talking about allergies, we are talking about across the board in research. In order for a medication to be marketed, first of all, it has to be safe, and then has to be efficacious. It has to do its job. Otherwise, there is no point in using it. So this is what we set out to do through clinical trials. Some of these trials take several years. From the inception, from phase 1 to phase 4, a drug can go through 4 or 5 years of testing. In order to put a drug on the market, usually takes an average of 9-10 years. So it's a lot of work that's put into a little molecule that starts as a simple molecule, evolves into a medication, a delivery system that has to be safe and efficacious.
And so Florida Center is the only research trial community in South Florida? Is that what I'm understanding? In Aventura?
We
and
are the
Kendall?
only center connected with an asthma practice. There are other places that are research centers that study asthma, conduct clinical trials for asthma, allergies, and so on and so forth. But we are the largest practice that has 2 research sites. So we have the database, we have the expertise, we have the knowledge to conduct these trials successfully.
So what you're trying to do today is you're reaching out into the community to talk. Let's talk about why one would be wanting to involve in a clinical research. You're looking for children, adolescents, adults to participate. And in these different medications, is it medications that are already on the market? Is it medications that are coming to the market? Is it you're looking for a particular demographic of how this would react with someone middle age or younger? How does that work when you're doing these kind of trials?
Well, we generally we do pediatrics. Some of our physicians are not only allergists, but they are pediatricians. We look for young children, we look for adolescents, we look for adults. So we pretty much cover the entire demographic. We have trials that include the population at large. We have some trials, there is a trial that will probably begin soon that is looking at the underserved populations. Sometimes we have trials that are looking at a specific ethnic group. Right now, the trials that we have are general trials.
Do people with different ethnic backgrounds react differently to medications?
Yes, to certain things. Yes.
What does that have to do with?
Well, it has to do with genetics. It also has to do with, we know, for example, the certain indications, certain diseases are more common in certain populations. And we learn now to treat based on certain markers. We treat certain asthma conditions based on the level of eosinophils. We treat based on the level of IG, so on and so forth.
What are those things?
So these are all measurable parameters that we do blood work for.
What are those? What are those? What are those blood markers?
Immunoglobulin E will show there are certain medications that will actually bind to the immunoglobulin E. These are medications like Xolair that will be for severe asthmatics. Also, urticaria patients benefit from being treated with Xolair. Then we have eosinophilic asthma, so eosinophils, component of the blood that are directly related to inflammation. Those levels, we treat them differently. Patients with a certain level of eosinophils versus lower level of eosinophils. We treat them differently, not because we want to do that, because we have learned that people that are in different categories benefit differently from certain medications.
So someone it would respond, my body might respond better to than another medication for someone else.
Exactly, or your body might not be benefiting from a medication that a person with higher eosinophils would benefit from. So in the course of a clinical trial, not only that we look at efficacy and safety, as I mentioned before, we look at many, many, many other parameters. So we learned over the years that we learned to treat differently and specifically. So you might have a certain population that will react better to a certain medication or a combination of the medication, or might not react as efficiently to certain things. So we learn now to look at pretty much every clinical trial has a pharmacogenetic component. We collect blood samples, we look at the pharmacogenetics, and we learn to treat specifically and better. There is always a fear of talking about treating differently. Different is not bad in this case, it's specific. So where before we used to treat everybody the same way because we didn't know any better or any different, now we know exactly how to treat to the need of a specific person. So we learned through the years, especially through pharmacogenetics, through many other means, to collect data that is very, very beneficial to understanding a condition in a much deeper way than we used to years and years ago.
So it's genetics, it's blood type.
Exactly.
It's your ancestry.
Part of that, yes.
It's a very interesting microcosm of all the stuff that is going on.
There's certain diseases that run in certain populations. We are talking now about allergy and asthma, and we should focus on this one because there is a lot to talk about that. Asthma is a prevalent disease, is a chronic disease.
What causes asthma?
Many things. There is allergic asthma, there is non-allergic asthma, there are many causes. You might have, like in your case, asthma has an emotional component. There are people that react to, they have a full-blown asthma attack based on an emotional state.
If I laugh too much, if my kids make me laugh, I can go into
cough.
A cough and then asthma. It's
Yes,
like, and then I start itching on the bottom of my chin, and it's really a response it's unreal. I guess I shouldn't be laughing as much.
Well, no, I don't think that's that's negotiable.
But what happens to the body during an asthma attack?
Well, there are two main things that happen. It is so asthma is a chronic condition in most cases. So managed carefully, it's a manageable disease. More often than not, we see our patients come in only in emergencies. And the minute the whole emergency situation is resolved, they go back to their indifferent state. And it's very sad because it could be controlled very easily with the right medication and the minimum amount of effort, practically. So what you see in asthma, very simplistically, is inflammation of the airways and bronchoconstriction. So this is a very simplistic way of addressing it. We use steroids to diminish the inflammation, and we use bronchodilators to, so we have here actually, this is a combination of a steroid with bronchodilators, and actually this one has 3 components. We'll get back to it a little bit later. And this is just a short-acting bronchodilator. So for people that have been using a rescue medication forever, most asthmatics have to use it. Ventolin, albuterol is a rescue medication, it's short-acting, 4 to 6 hours. And once you start using it several times a week, it's a clear indication that, or you need to use it several times a week, it's a clear indication that you need more meds than that you're not controlled, and you need to be seen by a doctor, and you should not self-medicate and self-diagnose, and just take advantage of the ability to see an allergist or a general practitioner to be correctly diagnosed and treated. People feel that if they don't take their meds and they just suffer silently, they are some sort of heroes. It doesn't work like that. A small amount of medication could control a patient very, very well. So you don't have to suffer with shortness of breath and tightness and cough, and it's very easy to control. There are extreme cases. There are people with severe asthma, but they didn't get severe overnight. It just progressed to that level of severity that could be impairing.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the clinicals that you're working on right now that you need our audience to participate in, and why would someone in the community want to? What are you finding that the reason that they should be doing these clinicals to help future generations, to help themselves, and we were talking off camera about things that have gone on in these trials 7 to 10 years ago. People are benefiting from it now.
Exactly. Well, there are 2 things, or several things, several reasons why I think people should participate. First of all, without people participating 10, 20, 50 years ago, we would not have these medications. My generation, my friends that are asthmatic, used to be in the hospital quite often, 20, 40, 50 years ago. Now they have medications they carry in the pocket, and they have maintenance medication that will prevent all these asthma attacks. So we came a very, very long way.
Are they oral? Some of them oral?
Some of them are oral, some of them are inhaled, yet you keep them in your purse. You use them twice a day, morning and night. It takes 30 seconds to take your meds, and then you go your merry way. For the more severe asthmatics, we have medications that are injectable or IV, it all depends. They will visit a doctor's office every 2 weeks or once a month. Some of them are even self-dosed nowadays, some of these injectables. So this is one of the reasons. Altruism. We forget about altruism in this very, very fast world we live in. So people several years ago participated in clinical trials to help develop a drug that you and I use today. And we need to continue that. We need to pass it forward. We have a long way to go, and by participating, we can collect enough data, we as a site, package it, send it to the pharmaceutical companies, they apply to the FDA, and this is how a drug comes to the market. It is very important that we do not break this chain. It is amazing how young children understand altruism, and yet we adults, seem to forget that. It is extremely important to pass things forward. Setting this aside, as a patient with asthma, it is important to understand asthma. Knowledge is power. And if you understand what asthma is and how to control it and how to treat it, you will live a very good life without much limitation and without a second thought. You don't control it, it's going to turn into severe asthma with tremendous limitations and all kinds of other issues. So clinical trials offer a tremendous amount of knowledge. We share with our patients all we know. We share labs. So in a clinical trial, we will do certain procedures, lab work, we'll do pulmonary function test. Sometimes we do allergy testing.
Pulmonary function is to see the capacity of your lungs.
Exactly. So it's a machine that most asthmatics are very used to. You blow into this machine. We measure a set of parameters that make us understand where your asthma is, and make us understand if you're a mild, a moderate, a severe asthmatic. And that is one of the basic tools in conjunction with others that help us understand how to treat.
And are these clinical research ongoing? Is it weeks? Is it months? Is it years? If a participant is interested in getting more information and becoming part of your research, how would they know what to do moving forward and their time commitment?
Well, each trial is a little bit different. We are always very happy to get into details with the patients that are willing to listen to us. We are encouraging patients to come to contact us via our website, via our phone. We have many ways of being contacted. Nowadays, where text, we also use texting. So please contact us.
The information is on the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
It's florida-allergy.com/research-center or 305-931-7583. Okay.
Correct.
So there's a lot of ways to get involved.
A lot of ways, and we are always willing to help people to get involved. We are helping and very happy to welcome people into clinical research. So trials take anywhere from 6 months to a year to 2 years, 3 years. It all depends. Some of the trials that are medications that are in the stage 1, 2, and 3, usually anyway from 6 months to a year.
So what's 1, 2, and 3? Explain that.
So phase 1 is the first phase in clinical trials on human patients. So the data that precedes that is all on animals, and it looks at safety, only safety of this particular component. Phase 1, we don't do phase 1. Phase 1, usually patients are housed in for at least a week, and it's all about safety. So this medication is being administered, and a slew of the labs are done constantly to look at the safety, liver, kidneys, and so on and so forth. Phase 2, these are the trials that we invite the patients that already have the indication, in our case, asthma. So this is the very beginning of using this medication on patients with asthma. There is usually a phase 2A and 2B. The next phase, and we have anywhere from 100 to 200 people involved in an entire trial. Phase 3 is the phase that requires usually thousands of patients. I'm talking about across all sites. Some of the trials are only in the United States, others are international trials.
So while you're researching and doing your clinicals here, they are being tested elsewhere as well.
Absolutely.
And then what happens is you cross-reference the information and share the findings together to come up with some kind of summary for that particular medication?
So we are one of the, let's say, 200 sites that is looking at a particular medication. The sites may be in the United States or throughout the world. The data that we collect from the patients that participate in these clinical trials is packaged and delivered to the pharmaceutical company on a web-based system. From there, after the phase 3, the pharmaceutical company packages the data, puts it together, and presents it to the FDA for approval. And so the FDA's approval is based on the data that we collect over all these years of studies, over all those patients in phase 1, 2, and 3. And this is extremely important because there is no other way that this is the path that every drug takes in this country, internationally as well. And for the patients that are afraid that they are going to become guinea pigs, I want to reassure everybody that every trial is done by doctors, by medical personnel, and is under the auspices of FDA.
So everybody is watched.
Everybody is watched.
So you're not just thrown into a trial and haphazardly whatever happens. It really is a monitored situation.
Extremely well monitored.
So safety is really paramount because these are the drugs of tomorrow.
Absolutely. Safety is extremely important. We constantly look at certain parameters. We capture every adverse event, every unusual event, whether it's related or not to the drug. Everything is reported on a daily basis. Our timelines are very tight, and the scrutiny is extremely, extremely intense. So rest assured that this is not some, I don't know how even to call it, some overnight, fly-by-night operation. and that we somehow bypass all these rules of the FDA, and so none of these patients should be. The term guinea pig, I don't think should be used anymore. It's just doesn't apply to what we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And again, this is really paying it forward for our community, not only in a local way, but in a worldwide way of really helping people, moving this forward so that asthma can be a thing of the past. And be under control, and people living really full lives. And I think that's really, really important to note. And what's some of the resistance? Why they're afraid that they're going to be a guinea pig, so to speak, or they're going to get hurt, or why are people resistant?
Well, some of these things are cultural, believe it or not. You know, certain cultures are not friendly to research. It's ingrained. You know, it comes from generations of, I guess, disbelief and distrust. The younger generations are a little bit more open, yet the younger generations are less involved in things. So again, passing it forward, giving back, helping, it's extremely important if we really want to survive in this world. It's not only going to the doctor when you need the doctor and you're desperate, it's also trying to help to get some things done. It's impossible to do clinical trials with our patients. So again, what I want to convey is that through a clinical trial, there is so much to learn. We have so many patients. We have patients that came in barely breathing, and they are running marathons now. It's all in the control. It's only learning how to control the asthma with the right medications.
And how many people are involved in one study? And what's the upcoming study that our audience can get involved
in a clinical trial, there is a physician that runs the show that's called the principal investigator. There are a couple of other sub-investigators, usually physicians or nurse practitioners. And then you have the coordinators, people that actually run the clinical trial.
And are these part of Florida Center?
Yes.
Or is this a subset outside of the normal practice that
No, this is our team. These are employees of the Florida the research center. This is a team that this structure has to exist in every clinical trial. So you have to have a principal investigator, you have a bunch of sub-investigators, doctors. We have a slew of doctors in our practice.
So you are watching, they are watching, you are being watched by a watchdog on what you're doing. So this is not just, I'm going to go do this. This is really taking time to making conscious, ethical decisions for other people's lives and with this medications that you're putting out in the market.
Absolutely. We receive very, very strict protocols. We follow a protocol from A to Z. There is no deviation from the protocol. So the pharmaceutical company creates a protocol. In the attempt to develop a drug, they develop a protocol that is given to every site that is like us. We also have central labs. Every vial of blood that is drawn goes to a central lab. So everything is centralized. Every site does the same thing. We are under the same structure. We follow the same procedures. There is no deviation from it. So at the end, when this entire data is being put together and analyzed and statistically analyzed, then it has to make sense. Absolutely. Otherwise, there is no way a drug would just pass the scrutiny of FDA and just show up on the market.
What's the newest clinical that you're looking for from our audience?
Well, we have several clinical trials for asthma right now. A couple of them for severe asthmatics. One of them is on a medication that is currently on the market. It's called Dupixent. It's for severe asthmatics. It was also approved for atopic dermatitis and also for nasal polyps.
And these are for what? Who are you looking for? Are you looking for?
So we're looking for asthmatics.
How old?
Yet some of them adults, 18 and over, that have had asthma for at least 1 year, and they are taking medications like this, a combination of a steroid and a bronchodilator. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what we are looking for. There are others, inclusion-exclusion criteria, yet we generally want to recruit patients on a very concise set of information so people don't get confused. So we are looking at adults. We also have a pediatric trial. Usually a drug is developed in adults, 18 and over. And then once that drug becomes available on the market, we move into the adolescents, 12 and 17. So we want to show that this drug is safe and efficacious for this age. And then we move into pediatrics, 6 to 12 usually. So the same drug, it's looked at several times based on this age groups. So we start with adults, then we do adolescents, then we do pediatrics. So we have an adolescent trial starting now on two meds that are actually on the market, yet we have to show, for this medication to be approved in this age group, we have to show that it's safe and efficacious for this group. Also, we have to look at the dosing that is appropriate for this group. So we have an adolescent trial that is starting right now on two medications that are on the market right now. We have a slew of other asthma trials that are ongoing, and we have two urticaria trials. Hives. A lot of people have hives. They suffer tremendously, itching, burning, and they have no idea why these hives come and go. Pretty much they have a mind of their own. So we have a level of expertise. We've done several trials with chronic idiopathic urticaria. We have very good medications. Most of the meds used to be subcutaneous injectables. Now we are moving into oral medications. So very easy to administer. You don't have to go to a doctor's office to have it dosed. And it's just a simple pill. Meds that work very, very well.
And there is compensation, but I guess what you're saying is that there's a bigger picture, but there is compensation. Then you can go on your website to learn all about the compensation that one can.
I want to mention, yes, absolutely. And I want to mention one thing. The FDA is very careful that patients don't get coerced into clinical trials. So there are financial incentives, are not incentives actually. What we pay patients is merely compensations for time and travel. We want to cover for their effort to come to the site and cover for their gas and transportation. And sometimes we offer transportation. If the patient doesn't have a car, that has problems with the car, we offer transportation. So this is not meant, whatever patients, is not a payment per se, is actually reimbursement for time and travel. Again, we have to be very careful not to coerce patients for the wrong reasons into the clinical trials.
Absolutely.
But I would like to appeal to, to people to consider it. If participation is voluntary, you come into a clinical trial, you might not qualify, but you have the opportunity to learn a lot in one single visit. I'm not exaggerating. Then something happens and you decide that this trial is not for you. You can withdraw consent. You're not married to us. You don't have to stay in the trial, although we'll make all efforts for you to understand and to convince you that you should complete this clinical trial so we can collect all the data. Yet, this is voluntary. The informed consent can be withdrawn at any given time.
Absolutely, I understand that. Florina, what is the best part of your job at the end of the day? You've been there forever?
Well, once in a while, not extremely often, there is a success story. You help somebody that you can see that in a year or two will be just, his life or her life will be very, very difficult. And all of a sudden you manage to turn that person around, show them what they need to do. The diagnosis is already there, so we don't diagnose. We base our assessments on already diagnoses that have already been made. But you get through to people, or you get to see a child that now can play versus being indoors all the time. There are very, very little things. There are small things that make our days.
And that's why we're here. We're here for to be a village, not
or
just
a patient. Exactly, a patient calls and says, "Thank you. You turned my life around because you taught me how to approach this," and that is invaluable.
Absolutely. And when I was 18 years old, the founders in 1974, Dr. Joan Gluck and Dr. Passon, really saved my life from asthma. So it's the Florida Center for Allergy and Asthma Care. Really, I thank them for getting me on board. It was theophylline,
yes.
and inhalers, and it really got me back on track. And the research that you do, paying it forward, and the research center, and all the goodness that you bring for the last 20 some odd years. Thank you. And I want to thank the Florida Center for also being part of our family. They're in this issue of Inspire Health, and you can read their article. And it is about research. So be part of their team, help pay it forward for the community that needs your help, and for all the right reasons. And I want to thank you for being part of
Thank you for having
my
me.
day from Transylvania, and I'm from New York. I don't know, it's a different match, but I really appreciate your humanity and for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
And I'm Fara Sax, and I want to thank you for being part of our conversation. Until next time, this has been the Community Voice. Take care.